Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Thursday, the 30th of March. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm delighted to say we're joined this morning for the first time in a long time by Chris Jack. How are we getting on, Chris?
Not too bad, Derek. Days off and other commitments have dragged me away from the morning briefing, but delighted to be back on.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on. Right, before we talk all things Rangers, folks, you know the drill by now. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You can see a little ticker below if you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. If you want to subscribe to the Rangers Review, just head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. Just £2.99 a month, an absolute bargain. If you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, nearing 12,000 subscribers on there, just hit that subscribe button. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the notification bell and you'll never miss a video when we go live. And also a quick word for our podcast sponsor, Seneca Hair Restoration, the #1 hair transplant corporation in Europe. If you're looking to maybe restore some lost self-confidence, then these are the guys to go to. And as ever, I've plugged the links to their website and their social media accounts in the description box. Right, Chris, let's talk Rangers. Saturday cannot come soon enough. Before we look at some of the news, Barry Ferguson, I know, has been talking about Ryan Jack, but in terms of you, international breaks, how does that consist for you? Is it you're struggling for things to work on, and you can't wait for Rangers to come back around again?
Counting down the days, I think it's safe to say, Derek. It's actually not been that bad. I was at the Legends game last weekend, which was good. The interview from that with Alec McLeish went in on Monday. Jermaine Defoe spoke after that and spoke really well as well. There was some nice stuff about him coming back and what his mum thought of Ibrox, and he was very complimentary of Michael Beale as well. And the final interview from that is Sasa Papac, which is going in tomorrow, so we'll look out for that one. Apart from that, it's been okay. Nice big piece with Craig Houston of the Sunderland Truth yesterday, talking about grassroots football, which was really interesting. A piece on David Haird's book, looking back at the treble season from 78. So I think there's been enough things to keep us ticking over. But as we were just saying off here, the presser and 3 o'clock on Saturday cannot come quick enough.
Yeah, absolutely. You've kept yourself busy, Chris. Just talking about that Legends game, talking to Sasa and what have you. I mean, what did you make of it? Great to see Defoe getting a proper send-off as well. I read his comments after the game, and it's nice to hear a player of that standing in the game and Rangers meaning so much to him. But did you enjoy yourself on Sunday?
That was actually a point I made to Big Ek. He came in to the press afterwards. I said it's nice that these guys continually come back because it shows what kind of impact the club and the fans actually made on them. If it had been any other club and you get a phone call, do you fancy coming halfway across Europe for a game? That lure and that attraction is not going to be there for every player, for every club. I think the fact that you continually do get the likes of Sasa coming back, Ronald Votis was there, not just the Scottish guys, Big Alberts was there, but also, unfortunately couldn't play. I think it does show the affection that these guys have for the club and the impact that the fans make. In terms of Jermaine, I thought he looked really sharp. Just a typical Jermaine Defoe performance. Took his goals with all the class expected. Came in, spoke as well as expected, and still has a waistline that is considerably slimmer than mine. So he's put a lot of us to shame in the shape that he's still keeping himself in. Put it that way.
Yeah, he could still do a job. I think Jermaine and a few others. I heard that Alan Hutton looked pretty sharp as well. But it was. I think
very impressive as well. But Van Persie still looks.
Oh yeah.
It's all the class act, but I thought overall it was a good day. These games are not exactly played at breakneck speed anymore, unfortunately. It was a bit more of a kick around, but it's always nice to see these guys back. I think a decent crowd as well, 25,000 or so. So I actually said in my piece that I filed from the game, it would have been a lot of people's first game at Ibrox. A lot of families taking kids to Ibrox for the first time, or people that hadn't had a chance because it's almost impossible to get tickets for big games at Ibrox these days. So a lot of guys just going back just to go and see the place and get a look at Edmiston House and get the pictures taken, that type of thing. So I think it certainly did the box, and it gave us something to write and talk about over the weekend. But nothing like the real thing this weekend.
Yeah, Kev Armstrong gets in touch. He says, "Will Chris be playing next year after Callum Beattie got a run out? I think you've got a chance next year, Chris, if you bring your boots, perhaps."
I have made that point on a couple of occasions. If Stephen Purder and Grado get a game and Callum Beattie then gets a game, I can't be far away, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, definitely. Right, let's get to a few more comments. Just when you touched on Edmonton House there, Chris, I want to raise this point. Matthew Ross says, I can't make it down to Glasgow anymore. How's the new Edmonton House getting on? Is it added to the matchday experience? Have you been in there, first of all, Chris? I was in when the soft opening, if you like. Thought it was brilliant. The fans I spoke to said it was a long time coming. And I'm hearing great stuff about it. What's your feeling towards New Edmonton House?
I've not had a chance to get in before a game yet, but there was a presser 2-3 weeks ago. Michael Beale and Yanis Hadji actually spoke at it. I was there that day. I had a wee look around it. It's a really impressive setup. And I think all the reports so far seem fairly positive. I think when you open a venue of that nature, there's always going to be teething problems in terms of access or food and drink or entertainment in terms of speakers or that type of thing, but it seems to have passed off relatively smoothly so far. There's obviously been a number of events. There's had the Hall of Fame, the Night of Legends last week as well. So I think in terms of an entertainment space, it's already shown what it can bring to the club. And time will tell what it actually makes money-wise, because ultimately, as much as it's a great experience, it's a great venue for the fans, it has to make some impact on the bottom line. If they can get near that £1 million a year that they were talking about before it, I think that's a decent enough return on the investment.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Few comments coming in. Let's get to a few of them. Kenny says, morning lads. Derek, can you confirm if there is a presser today? There is not, Kenny. The press conference is taking place tomorrow on Friday, so we'll get an opportunity to speak to Michael Beale then. And John Dooley raises a point aimed at you, Chris. He says, is Chris concerned about Michael Beale's comments on Alan McGregor? Of course, speaking to Rangers TV the other day, Michael Beale on Alan McGregor. Of course, he'll make his 500th Rangers appearance at the weekend against Dundee United, and his comments talking about him, praising the fact that he's going to reach that milestone. He did say, I think what John is alluding to is he's saying he's not finished yet. He says it won't be 500, it won't end there. But I think the service that he's given this football club as a young boy coming through our academy is absolutely outstanding. Can you read too much into those words from Michael Beale, Chris, about potentially Alan McGregor staying on?
No, I think there's a lot of reading too much being done. Yeah. I think people are looking for something that's not really there. I think when Michael says he's not going to end at 500, it's almost a bit obvious, because this isn't the final game of the season. There is still 10 games or so between now and the end of the campaign. Hopefully there's 2 at Hampden rather than 1 to come as well. So I think the fact that he said it's not going to end at 500, well, it's kind of obvious, because he will make 501 next week. So 500 isn't going to be the end of it for Alan McGregor. I think people are maybe reading too much into it. Michael has been quite clear, I think, on Alan McGregor's position. He all but retired him at Rugby Park a couple of months ago in a post-match press conference, basically saying that this is likely to be his final season. Hopefully, if it does prove to be Alan's final few weeks, which I think it will be, hopefully end with a Scottish Cup medal like it perhaps should have done last year. But in terms of the achievement, it's an incredible landmark for Alan to get to. Thoroughly deserved. He's more than merited his place in the Hall of Fame. I've got a piece out today speaking to Big Eck, Jim Stewart, also his goalie coach at Scotland and Rangers, and Peter McCloy, the last keeper to get to that 500 mark as well. And all three spoke very highly of him as a player and a person. And I think every nice thing that's said about Alan over the next a few days and hopefully a few weeks and months has certainly been deserved. Yeah,
and if you had to pick one save, Chris, put you on the spot, his best save in Rangers colours, is there one that stands out for you?
I had the unenviable task yesterday of trying to pick 5, and if anybody doesn't agree with the 5, please don't shout at me, because there is a lot more than 5, trust me. I think the one that everybody goes back to is Bremen, obviously. That's the one that stands out. The Samaras penalty, I think, runs it very close in terms of what that meant at the time. There's even ones that I'd forgotten about yesterday. I put in the Mazepin header over in Prague. That wasn't that long ago, but we watched that one back. Just an incredible save at that time. I think the other one I had in was the Scotland save against Israel, which again, if he hadn't have made that save against Israel, Scotland don't get a playoff place. If Scotland don't get a playoff place, they don't get anywhere near Euro 2020, never mind qualify for it. So in the grand scheme of things, what a huge save that was for Scottish football. And the other one I picked was the penalty against Belgrade last season. Again, Rangers were 2-0 up at that time, made a wonderful save from the penalty. How that tie then played out, his performance in Belgrade a few days later. Again, he doesn't make those saves. Rangers don't get to Seville. So I think I'll plump for the Bremen one, since you put me on the spot, Derek. But there's that many. As Jim Stewart said, you could talk about Alan McGregor saves all day.
Yeah, you certainly could. That Prague one, I think that would maybe be held in higher esteem if Rangers had progressed. I think when he made that save, everyone was thinking that could be absolutely huge in the grand scheme of things. But if I'm not mistaken, Rangers won the league in between those ties, and perhaps their minds are slightly off the tie at the return at Ibrox. But yeah, it was a wonderful save that by Alan McGregor. And do go check Chris's article out, folks, this morning. Right, let's get to a few more comments that are coming. Well, first of all, Barry Ferguson has been speaking about Ryan Jack. Chris, he says he's a big fan of Jack and that reckons he should be given a new contract. He says that a lot of people have been talking about Raskin and Cantwell, and rightly so, because they have impressed. But Ryan Jack's been a big part of that. He's the one that keeps it solid in the middle of the pitch and lets the footballers go and do their stuff. The only issue with Ryan Jack is making sure he continues to be fit week in, week out. And if Jack is free of injury, I still think he's got a big part to play at Rangers. I think we've discussed this before. I would have no qualms if Ryan Jack was offered a new contract, perhaps a one-year extension, Chris, of the players that are out of contract in the summer, and there are many. I think the two big ones for me I would like to see stay on would be Jack and Kent. Would you go along with that?
Definitely. I think that's the two that we're looking at. That's the two that have been most keen to stay on for very different reasons in terms of what they can give Rangers long term. I know that's something the manager speaks a lot about, and the guys that he can go on this journey with over the next 3 or 4 seasons. You look at the profile of Ryan Kent, you will get 3 more great seasons out of him. Are you going to get 3-4 seasons out of Ryan Jack at the level required? Probably not. Could you get another 12 months out of Ryan Jack? Definitely, I think so. And the manager also spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, all but confirmed that Jacko was one of the guys he would like to keep on. I think he does have a part to play in terms of a squad place. He's not going to be one of the first names on the team sheet, but that's just because you can't rely on him to go and play 50 games. He's not a 50-game-a-season midfielder now. If you can get 30 games out of him in those 30 games, you know exactly what you're going to get in terms of a level, in terms of a commitment, in terms of what it brings off the pitch as well. I think that's got not a tricky balance tonight, but I think it's something the manager has to be wary of over the summer. Having the right number of guys that know the club, that know the squad. It doesn't mean to say they have to be Scottish, they have to be Rangers fans, they have to have not been born on the Copeland Road, but guys that just know the standards, that know how to win, that know what it's like to go to Pittodrie, know what an Old Firm game is like, know the expectations when it's St Johnstone at Ibrox and the crowd are on your back 10-15 minutes in. It takes certain characters to be able to then tell your Cantwells and your Raskins and the rest of the guys that are going to come in, look, this is Rangers, this is what this place is all about. I think you have to be wary of throwing away too many of these guys. If you think McGregor probably going to retire, it looks like Stephen Davis might not get a deal just because of his injury situation. You're then losing two big players, potentially losing Scott Arfield if you go down the same road with him. I think you have to retain a couple of them just to give you those leaders in the dressing room. I know Gerrard built that leadership core that's still there all these years on. And I know like Goldson and Tav will still be there, but I think you need to still have these type of guys in and around the place. And if you can get the best of Ryan Jack in that regard and get 30 games a season out of him, to me, he's more than worth another contract.
Yeah, some interesting points being raised here in the comments. James Perry says, would give Jack another year, no problem. Kent and Morelos can leave. Time to move on up front and get new blood in. And RFC 56 with an interesting point here. He says, Jack getting another contract, Lundstram getting sold in the summer then. Do you think he will be entering into his final year, Chris? John Lundstram, it's stick or twist, I think, with that one. Do you sell, or do you give him a new contract, or do you just let him run down his current deal? That's something for Michael Beale to think about, I reckon.
We asked Lundstram did the press maybe 3-4 weeks ago, and he was asked about his contract stuff and played it down, said it's not something that's on his mind and he's not really considering it. I'm sure it's something the manager will have in the back of his mind, though, because you don't want to get into this situation every summer of having a whole host of guys out of contract. If you did decide to sell John Lundstram in the summer, you're not going to get huge money for him. You're not going to suddenly bring in 5 million to then go and recoup and put in another, or to go and reinvest, and put into another player. You will get 7 figures for him. But I think it's not a problem as such. But the issue, he's not been anywhere near as influential and as good this season as he was last season. If you can say the John Lundstram that you'll get next season is the Lundstram that you had last season, yes, by all means, he's part of the squad. He's more than earned it. But like a number of guys, he's just been down that level this season for whatever reason. I think that's why his situation is now interesting. It will become a problem if you get to October and he's still not really kicked on. He's still not got back to the levels. Then there's maybe a real debate of is his place, is his long-term future here. Right now, I'd be surprised if he's sold, but it depends. I say that it's going to be an interesting summer, as we say every week, Derek. So I would rule nothing out, rule nothing in. But at the minute, I see John Lundstram being a part of that Rangers midfield options next season. I think Glenn Kamara's probably the one that's going to pay the price and be moved on.
Yeah, he's certainly someone that splits opinion amongst the fan base. Certainly this season has been nowhere near the levels that we've seen at the back end of last term, that's for sure. I certainly haven't heard the John Lundstram is the best on earth song for some time. So I wonder when we'll hear that again in the stands at Ibrox. Comments coming in. Aldo says, any news on Raskin? Is he fit? That'll be an interesting one, Chris, when we speak to the manager tomorrow. Of course, he was ruled out of the Motherwell game just prior to the international break with was it a quad injury, if I'm not mistaken. He then jetted off to join Belgium under-21s, and he pulled out of their 2 matches. This is a bit of a concern at the time. Michael Beale says we would judge him on Friday's training, and it didn't sound too much of an issue. However, as with Rangers' season this term, I wouldn't blame supporters for getting a little bit anxious about Nico Raskin. Hopefully it's good news we hear tomorrow.
Fingers crossed. It would officially sum up Rangers' season if the guy that they signed in January and has looked really impressive so far, that the fans have really got behind and really like, if we now find out he's ruled out for 6 weeks. So fingers crossed. I haven't actually heard any update on it over the international break. So I said that when the manager spoke about it, it didn't really make that big a deal of it. It didn't sound at that time as if it was a serious issue. I think the missing the Motherwell game, hopefully just a precaution. Hopefully missing the international games, again, just a precaution, not doing anything silly and taking any chances with them. So, no, fingers crossed. If it was to be a longer term one, I say might as well just packing up and going home, because it would officially sum up the season for us. So hopefully there's some good news on that, and we're not coming back on next week lamenting the loss of yet another key player for us.
Yeah, and just on the back of that, Macca says, morning, Derek and Chris. Can't wait for Saturday. You and me both, Macca. Will Michael Beale give any update on the contract situation? As he says, he'll be speaking to players during the break. Yes, he did say that, Chris, didn't he? It would give him a chance to have a conversation with a few players. He seems to be getting asked every press conference, particularly around about Morelos in Kent, about their contract situations. I know he was asked about Arfield recently as well, because there were murmurings that he had been offered a new deal and he said he hadn't, but he's a top guy to have around the place. Do you think we may get an update on Friday perhaps, or do you think he'll keep his cards close to his chest?
Safe to say he will be asked for an update. I think he seems to be asked about it on a weekly basis, and he will be until there's news. And then once there is news, he'll still be asked about it, because people are just that keen for information. It's such a pivotal talking point. It's one of the few real burning issues of Rangers right now, because the fans want to know what is the situation with these guys, because that influences so much of the other work that Rangers are going to do over the summer. If you let the contract guys go, you're then looking at replacing them plus signing 5-6 starters to the team. If you retain a couple, you're then also not looking as big a rebuild. if you lose Morelos, you need at least one striker to replace him. Plus, guys will be looking at maybe an upgrade on Cholak, looking at an upgrade in terms of reliability and robustness, and in terms of Roof. If Kent goes, that leaves a huge hole on that left-hand side. And whether the fans like him or not, he has been such a key part of the team for the last 3-4 seasons now. And if he's not there, that's a gap that has to be filled, because there's nobody else in the squad that's going to go in and do that job at present. So I think that's why the manager is asked about it as often, because the fans want to know. The guys asking the questions like ourselves want to know. So I'm sure it will be on a lengthy list of things to ask him on Friday afternoon.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. And just a few interesting points come in. Louise Wise says, just looking at transfers, thoughts on Conor Bradley. We need more Northern Ireland players in. I watch him every week at Bolton. He's on loan from Liverpool, and the boy is an absolute talent. He started for man of the match, I'm sure, for Northern Ireland in one of the matches. And I can't remember who they were playing, Finland perhaps, in the last international game. He impressed for his country. He's got a great future ahead of him. I've been very impressed with him this season at Bolton. By all accounts, he's going back to Liverpool, and I think he could upset Trent Alexander-Arnold. That's how good I think he is. He's a top player. Whether Rangers can attract him to Ibrox remains to be seen. I'm not too sure if you've seen any of young Conor Bradley at all, Chris, that you can pass comment on.
No, is that a link that I've missed? Has he been tweeted about somewhere? Is Louise just firing names at Ross Wilson?
I think she's just firing names out there.
The more names, the merrier. We can never knock down names. He's not someone I know that much about, to be honest, Derek. I heard the name, but I couldn't pass an expert judgment on whether he would improve Rangers or not.
Yeah, I'd love to see him at Ibrox, but I think that's might be unrealistic. Angus Gunn has also been rumoured a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, Chris, that Rangers were sniffing about Angus Gunn. Of course, came to the fore in the last couple of Scotland games. People not too impressed with his performance against Spain when it comes to his distribution. Would you be opposed to Angus Gunn pitching up at Ibrox in the summer?
I think he's got a decent profile. He's got good experience behind him. He's obviously the man that Steve Clarke has decided will be number one. Until Craig Gordon is fully recovered from injury. Once he is, I wouldn't be surprised to see Craig come back in and reclaim that jersey. I don't think it was a surprise that Gunn got the nod. I think if you're going to convince someone to switch their allegiance and to come and play for Scotland, you're not going to do that, and he's not going to do that to then come and sit on the bench and be second or third choice. So as much as I'm sure Zander Clark and Liam Kelly will be disappointed to miss out, I think it was fairly obvious how Steve Clarke was going to go as soon as Gunn was named in the squad. Keeper will obviously be an area that Rangers have to strengthen. I wrote a piece a few weeks ago saying that they're definitely looking for one, probably looking for two, and maybe looking for three, depending on how Ross McCrory sees his future. If he's not going to be at least number two and potentially number one, it might be time for him to move on. I think John McLaughlin's got a decision to make, and we've all but retired Alan McGregor over the last few weeks, haven't we? So Alan's not even getting to make a decision now. Everybody has just decided that it's the end for him. But Rangers will need a new number one, whether that's Robbie McCrory stepping up from his current place as third choice, or it's going out and signing somebody. And I said there's every chance that we'll need another backup as well. So really interesting to see what Rangers do in terms of the keepers. Gunn, I think, fits the profile, ticks certain boxes. Is he better than Alan McGregor? No, but you're going to go some way to find the new Alan McGregor right now. So I think Rangers fans might just need to put a bit of faith in the manager and hope that he can pick someone. But bearing in mind that whoever comes in, he's not going to be Alan McGregor, because, as Jim Stewart said to me the other day, only Alan McGregor is Alan McGregor. Yeah,
it's certainly big gloves to fill whoever takes over the mantle. Just touching on Saturday, Chris, a few selection headaches that Michael Beale will have with Celtic on the horizon as well. I think up front is one that sort of a lot of supporters feel that Alfredo Morelos, with his cameo against Motherwell, deserves to take the jersey after that poor performance from Antonio Cholak. You've got a decision to make at left back as well, and then we've got the back three idea murmuring away in the background. How do you see him going on Saturday?
I don't know, actually, because as you say, there's plenty of options there. I wouldn't be surprised if he sticks with what worked heading into that Motherwell game. The form has been good. To think back to the game Easter Road was really impressive. If you see something along those lines, I wouldn't be surprised. But you've obviously then got Tillman is now back up and running. A lot depends on Raskin whether he's fit. You also get Seneca coming back off a mixed international break after his comments the other day there on his social media towards the Zambian fans. So there's a lot of kind of moving parts here for Rangers. Left back, I think, is an interesting one now that Yilmaz is back. I thought he looked a wee bit rusty for part, but understandably, he's had another fortnight worth of training. He's had that game time under his belt now, so the manager does have a call to make there. The three at the back is something that I quite like going forward. It's something that I can see a lot of merit in for Rangers in certain situations. I'd be surprised if it's something that he tries out too much while the league is still live, for want of a better word, because we all know that it's not really. But I think by the time you get to the split and the league's done, it's maybe something he might experiment a wee bit more with once John Souttar's got a bit more game time under his belt. But I think going forward, that could certainly be something that's a real possibility for Rangers.
Yeah. One other point I wanted to put to you, Chris, before that, I love this update from S. He says, sorry I'm late, folks. I'm having an operation on my thyroid and my goldfish is at the vet because my nephew is playing in the local badminton team. 45 degrees here in sunny Adelaide. Well, thanks very much for the update, and good to have your company on this Thursday. Well, it'll be evening, afternoon over there down under. Hopefully your goldfish is on the mend, and yourself, buddy, as well. Just to finish up then, Chris, World's Greatest DJ says, could Chris mention the new book coming out on May the 1st about the 1977-78 season? This is the interview you did with David Herd, wasn't it?
Yes, it was in I've lost track of days, last Saturday I think it was in. So I going back through the 77-78 season, also the second treble in 3 years. And ironically, as I spoke to David about the end of an era, because it was a long time after that Rangers then also won their next league title. It was quite remarkable for a team of such legends. You think back to the Big Peter I mentioned earlier on, but DJ in that team, obviously Greg and Sandy and that guys who had such huge success over the years. Just became the end of their time. But it was also the start of a new era. And one of the guys that I spoke to David heard about was David Cooper. It was actually on the anniversary of Coop's death. I actually spoke to David to do the interview, and he's in the blurb on Amazon to promote the book. Cooper is the only player that he mentions. I says, well, Cooper must have been the standout of that time. And I said, Cooper was obviously his hero of that time. Gordon Smith coming in that season as well. So it's a really interesting interview. Having done Big DJ's column for the Even Times for so many years, it's a season that I heard a lot of stories about, and it's one that the big man speaks really fondly about, obviously. So I would urge people to go and check out the book out in a couple of weeks, and I'm sure it'll be a great read.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Right, folks, that'll do us there. Big thanks to Chris, as ever, for joining us. Pleasure having you on, and great to have all the interaction as well, folks. It's very much appreciated. We'll be back again tomorrow. Myself and Johnny will be on, looking ahead further to that game on Saturday at Ibrox when Dundee United are the visitors. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Bye.